Hello, my name is Ben Lund. I'm the founder of Rise Marketing Group, and I'm really excited to be sharing this content with you as we're going to get into all aspects of technical SEO. Joining me is Jill Lehman. She's our SEO lead who runs the SEO at our practice here at Rise Marketing Group. What we're about to present are actually key things that we take a look at when any client hires us for technical SEO. So it's very much actionable because everything that we're about to share are elements that we actually take a look at when clients hire us to improve their technical SEO on their website. We have a jam-packed agenda. We're going to be covering Google Search Console, what it is and how you can use it to make sure all of your pages are indexed by Google. Next, we're going to get into technical SEO audit. We're going to prioritize specific technical elements of a website that's very important to give the right signals to Google to make sure that these pages are as visible as possible to Google and they understand the context of each page. From there, we're going to get into Schema. Schema is additional markup and code that you can put on your website to be even more visible, not only on Google, but all of the search engines. From there, we're going to get into URL structure and best practices, as well as canonical URLs and how to approach them. And then lastly, we're going to cap off with Core Web Vitals. Core Web Vitals are powerful tools that Google has released to improve both the user experience as well as it can have some pretty hefty SEO impact as well. As you're going through this, feel free to reach out with any questions, comments, concerns, and of course, if anyone needs additional support, feel free to reach out to Rise Marketing Group. Just Google us or visit our website directly at risemkg.com. We hope you enjoy. Let's just jump right into it. Google Search Console and indexation. Now, Jill, before, as we kick things off, what is indexing a page or a website?
So pages that are indexable are pages that can be crawled by Google. This allows Google to analyze your content and the meaning of that page. When Google is able to crawl pages, they're allowed to appear in Google's search results or Google's search index. Not all pages can be indexed. So ones that have a robot.txt rule or a no index tag on the page, you won't be able to see in search results. So you'll be blocking Google's bots from being able to crawl those pages.
Cool. And is it required to index something to show on Google?
It's not required, and sometimes you may not even want to index all of your pages. Important pages that you'll want users from Google to arrive onto your website first on those pages, those are ones that you'll definitely want to have indexed. But there's also some instances where you wouldn't want pages indexed. So some of those are duplicate pages. There may be instances where you have duplicate pages or pages with multiple variations. So similar pages, but maybe one piece of information is different on those pages because it's geared towards a different audience. Those pages would be considered duplicate content, which can actually harm your SEO. So you'll want to avoid indexing all of those pages and set a canonical URL instead. Another instance is pages with thin content. So sometimes pages don't have too much content, but they are important to have on the site. Those may not be the pages that you want your users to arrive on first, as it doesn't have a lot of context within the page that they can find value off of. Another example is thank you pages or confirmation pages. If someone fills out a form on your website, it may redirect them to a thank you page. You wouldn't want anyone from Google arriving on that page first, as it would have no value to them. Same with any login pages. You wouldn't want anything not meant for public access to be indexed. So for e-commerce, this one example could be a checkout section of the site. You wouldn't want that indexed where they're putting in their card information or anything. And then lastly, just category or tag pages. So if you have a blog section on your site, you may have some organizational categories or some tags that help filter out some of the blogs. Since your main blog page and all of your blogs are likely to be indexed, you wouldn't want to have the category or tag pages indexed too. That'll just not really be of value, and it'll also be a bit of duplicate content as well.
Yeah, great examples, great examples. Because yeah, a lot of folks, when they have a website, they're just like, okay, let Google access everything. And actually, there are pages that you definitely don't want to have access to because it could have a lot of sensitive information, or if it's not going to help you from an SEO perspective, prevent, in this case, Google, And also, if you have great content, but for whatever reason Google isn't able to access this, make sure that you formally request indexation. So yeah, great. Thanks for sharing that. And for anyone who's listening, feel free to drop any comments in, and we'll do our best on try to answer those. So we talked about indexation. Let's move on to Google Search Console, which I know you can request indexation from Google Search Console. So high level, what is Google Search Console?
It's a great tool. It's especially great for organic performance monitoring and for SEO strategies. It allows you to monitor essentially how Google views your site and also troubleshooting anything that's impacting your site's presence within Google's organic search results. So, for example, if you can't see one of your main important pages on in Google search results, that may be something where you look into Google Search Console and you'll be able to see what issue is preventing that page from being indexed. There's a lot of great tools in there, mostly geared towards organic, such as Core Web Vitals, performance, things like that.
Yeah, and Google Search Console. I mean, this is one of the first places that I go to check every day. I just love it. There's just so much great information, and the best part, outside of the information that it shares, it's free. It's not a paid platform. There's a lot of great tools out there like SEMrush, which we also subscribe to. But yeah, it's free. So let's jump into Google Search Console a little bit more. What are some of the tools available?
So some of those tools that you see on there, Core Web Vitals, that measures how user-friendly your website is. So that has a lot to do with loading performance, interactivity, visual stability. These are all key metrics that determine the health of your site and how users are able to access it. Performance, you'll be able to see a big dashboard in Google Search Console that's great for monitoring organic performance specifically. You'll see trend lines for impressions, clicks, site click-through rate, and average position. You can filter the data for specific dates or specific pages or search queries. So it really lets you see a lot of how users are coming from Google into your site. And you'll be able to monitor any SEO strategies that you're implementing there. Yep. And then for indexing, you can also request indexing. So pages that you made changes to recently or new pages, you can ask Google to recrawl those pages or prioritize recrawling them. And another thing is troubleshooting pages that aren't getting indexed. That's another great use of that tool. And then lastly is just sitemaps. You can submit your sitemap to Google straight through Google Search Console. So this allows your sitemap to appear in search results and helps Google navigate your site, find pages, videos, and images.
Awesome. So many tools available, and I personally love the performance because we implement so many SEO strategies on behalf of our clients, and you can log into Google Search Console every day or every week, whatever you want to take a look at, and then you can see, are my strategies that I outlined working well for our clients? And if so, keep on doing what you're doing, or maybe if it not, maybe make some adjustments. But it's really fun. And I think even within the performance report, the one I really love is just to see the search queries that you're mapping to and your average position. Always fun to see. Jill, I don't know if you have a favorite report that you like within Google Search Console.
Like you mentioned, the search queries are great. They can also help you find high-performing keywords, which are just going to drive a lot of the content that you're targeting. It's also interesting to see what queries and what pages are bringing in most of your users from Google. So it's all very insightful as the performance dashboard.
Super insightful. And as I mentioned, there's a lot of other great third-party tools, but the key difference with Google Search Console, one, it's free, but two, it comes directly from Google, so it doesn't have to rely on web scrapers that give really good directional data. This is data that's coming right from Google. So setting up Google Search Console, is it difficult, and what's the process in doing so?
It's pretty easy to set up Google Search Console. You don't need a lot to set it up. Essentially, there's two options. You'll just have to choose the property type, so either domain or URL prefix to set this up. Each one has its own requirements for verifying it, but it only takes a matter of minutes once you're in the back end of your site to be able to set up that verification in Google Search Console. And then from there, it takes up to 48 hours for you to see some metrics within the Google Search Console dashboard. The earlier you set it up to, the more data you may see over time, depending on the property type that you set it up with.
Yep. Yeah, that's a really good tip. Anyone who has a website or building one, day one or week one, set up Google Search Console, because from that moment and onwards, you're going to collect a lot of really good data. And as Jill mentioned, pretty straightforward to set up. Just have a Google account and go to Google Search Console and follow the steps and pick between domain or the URL prefix. Anything else on setting it up?
And one more thing for setting up is that there are some instances where you can have multiple Google Search Console dashboards set up. This comes up in a few different ways. So sometimes you'll see a business that has had their Google Search Console set up by someone who no longer works for the company. If you set it up through a domain property type, you'll be able to find any hidden Google Search Console dashboards that you might not know about. You'll be able to see the users and permissions in there, and you'll be able to even remove properties if you need to. You can also set them up intentionally. So if you want to see total website organic performance, you may set up the domain property type Google Search Console dashboard, but you may also want to see just organic performance for a specific subdomain. So that's when you'd set up a separate Google Search Console dashboard. They won't impact each other. You can actually use them interchangeably, and they won't interfere with any of the data between them.
Awesome. Cool. Super helpful. And this is just an example performance report that we were showing. This is always fun. You can highlight clicks and impressions, color coded over time. Obviously, you always want to see up and to the right. That's what we always strive for. But you can overlay different scenarios, average position, click-through rate, and then even compare certain moments month over month, week over week, or if your business is seasonal, maybe year over year, just to take out any aspect of seasonality in this. So let's, another very common question that I get, Jill, and I know you probably get this all the time, is what's the difference between Google Search Console and GA4?
So Google Search Console is focusing more on search-related traffic. GA4 focuses on user behavior and engagement. For Google Search Console, you'll mainly use this for organic traffic. The performance dashboard in Google Search Console, that will only have organic traffic in it. So you won't be able to see any sort of traffic coming from paid ads. In GA4, that's where you'll want to look for paid ads data. So things like user sessions and conversions on those paid ads, you'll want to see in there. Google Search Console just basically shows you how Google sees your website. If you want to see how users across mediums are engaging with your website, that's when you would use GA4 instead.
Yep. Yeah, and really every business, every website should have both of them set up. GA4 is another great free platform. These are all free. You don't have to pay anything, no monthly subscriptions or anything like that. And and just think of it, Google Search Console, that is your reporting just for Google search and how you're ranking for certain keywords, as well as pages on your website. GA4, this should be like your main reporting analytics for your website. That's going to give data and insights across all your traffic. Where are they coming from? What are they doing on your website? And even just kind of a quick side note for anyone who needs help setting up Google Analytics because it is a little bit more challenging than Google Search Console, feel free to check out our website and then contact us. Happy to advise on that. And our link is right below just for this banner real quick, because it can take some time, especially when you want to set up different conversion events and some proper measurement there. But enough on Google Search Console. But yeah, this is super helpful on the key differences between the two. But the main takeaway, set it up and then you'll have the data. And what we usually like to do is set up tracking. The data is going to let you know what's working and what's not working. We can't forget about Bing, can we, Jill?
Definitely not.
So just like Google, Bing has webmaster tools. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So Bing Webmaster Tools is very similar to Google Search Console. You'll be able to see in both of them kind of the same thing. So you'll see even on the side there some of very similar options like search performance to Google Search Console. The only difference is that in Google Search Console, you won't be able to see users coming from Bing. In Bing Webmaster Tools, that's where you'll be able to see that data. So if some of your users, if you notice in Google Analytics, are coming from Bing and then some coming from Google Search Console, it might be good to set up both dashboards. They are both free and great options for making sure that you can track your users coming from both search engines.
Yep. Yeah, and for whatever reason, the traffic and how you're ranking on Bing can definitely be very different from Google. And that might even be an optimization play too. You might say, wow, I'm getting a lot of traffic from this page on Bing, but Google's not really acknowledging it too much. Maybe optimize it more to get more Bing traffic, or take a look at Google Search Console. Maybe you need to request indexation or things like that. But first, start off with Google, because that is definitely the lion's share of search. But Bing has been gaining ground over the past year with the advent of ChatGPT and all the innovations that they're doing, which we've even seen an increase in search activity. Jill, as we wrap up on this session of Google Search Console as well as indexation, is there any other kind of takeaways or tips that folks should consider on these topics?
If you are looking for more resources, we do have a few blogs that cover these topics. I think everything was mostly covered for in here, but it's great. Yeah, great tools for SEO strategy. Definitely recommend setting it up so you can monitor your organic performance.
What is a technical audit? Now, a technical audit has been around for a long time. Many different agencies have different definitions of what's included, and we're going to really break down what's most important that we include within our SEO technical audits. Next, we're going to get into access points for a technical audit, of how to uncover this type of information and which platforms that you should have access to. And then we're going to really jump into what does a technical audit include. And as I just mentioned a little while ago, we really prioritize the key things that's going to have the most impact from an SEO perspective. Now, we're going to cover canonicals, indexation, metadata, which includes meta title and descriptions, headers, image alt text, and there's a few other things like broken links and URL changes that's really important to take a look at, just to make sure that Google and all the other search engines have a really solid understanding of what the site is all about, to ultimately help rank higher for the right users looking for information that's on that page or on that site. So getting started, Jill, what is a technical SEO audit?
So for us, a technical audit reviews a site to identify any issues that are impacting visibility and organic search results, anything impacting your search rankings and organic traffic. By identifying these problems, we can better make suggestions to help optimize your site for SEO. This is best done when either you haven't previously invested in SEO, or if you're doing any major changes to your site structure, and also when before you're implementing any new SEO strategies to your site. It serves as a great starting point too for just improving your site's organic traffic.
Absolutely. And it's so critical that before any real SEO work is done, start off with an audit, because if you just jump into content creation or trying to build up your backlink profile, but your site isn't technically sound, you're not going to get the most impact from all the great content that you're going to be published. So anyone who's just embarking on SEO, whether you're going to do it yourself or hire a firm like Rise Marketing Group, always start off with an audit. And even some of the clients that we work with, if they had an audit done in the past, but maybe it's a couple years old, we always recommend, let's just do an audit to start, just to check the box, make sure everything is very sound from a technical standpoint before you start embarking on other elements of SEO. Now, when we start an audit, what are some of the access points that is recommended just to make sure that we're getting all the best information possible to put together technical SEO recommendations?
So like you just mentioned, sharing all these access points is going to give you the most accurate and in-depth review during that audit for any technical SEO issues. So that starts with just getting some website access. If you don't already have Google Search Console, Bing Webmaster Tools, and GA4 set up, then this website access will just help get those set up so that you can review things like canonicals and indexing. With site access, any notable issues on your site's SEO, such as any like blank headers on a page or any missing meta descriptions, those can be double checked through the back end of the site just to clarify and make sure that everything we're reviewing is in line with what looks like it's appearing in the back end of your site. With Google Search Console and Bing Webmaster Tools, you can review important pages that are getting indexed in search results. If there's any pages that aren't getting indexed, this is when you'll be able to see and just make note of those pages that aren't getting indexed and identify any issues that might be causing that to happen. GA4 is good to set up just to show any organic traffic data that might just help guide some of the priority pages to optimize on the site and just see how users are interacting with each given page currently that are coming from organic traffic.
Yep. Yeah, and here, these are the top ones that we recommend, and really just want to get as much information as possible when putting together recommendations. And I personally, my favorite on the list is Google Search Console as one of the key access points for a technical audit. And if you log into Google Search Console and Google tells you that something's wrong with your site, you better fix it, because it's just kind of telling you very straightforward. But also it gives you indication, as Jill, you're alluding to, is which pages are being indexed, which pages aren't being indexed. And there could be a variety of issues that Google might be bubbling up, but you also don't want to overlook Bing, because that has a lot of good content there as well. So anyone who's about to embark on a technical audit, make sure that you have all of these different access points just to get started. And now let's get into what's included in an SEO audit. Jill, what are some of the main things that you like to look at?
So some of the things mentioned on the slide are just the most important elements that are reviewed in a technical audit. These are also the ones that most commonly are found to have issues that need to be fixed just to improve your SEO. They're pretty easy wins that you can make adjustments to. So those include canonicals, indexing, metadata, headers on your each page on your site, image alt text, finding any internal, external broken links, URL changes, and any redirects that need to be made from old URLs. And then just reviewing page speed, which goes along with core web vitals as well. And all of these elements are just going to impact Google's understanding of how you want each page on your site to be interacted with by users.
Yep. Absolutely. I mean, a technical audit could really cover 20 or 30 different items, but these are the core 8 pieces that we focus on, because in our experiences and knowledge that these are some of the most important ones that are going to have the most impact on a site. So let's jump into canonicals and indexation. Jill, why don't you break down what are canonicals and indexation and how that's included or should be included within a technical SEO audit?
So this is often one of the first things that's reviewed in a technical audit. And the reason being is that any pages that are important should be getting indexed. If they're not getting indexed, then that is immediately something that needs to be we need to start troubleshooting and just figure out why they're not getting indexed. Canonicals will help you avoid duplicate content issues that could either prevent your page from being indexed or hurt your page in search rankings. So both of these are just going to impact how users are able to, or whether your users are able to see your pages in Google search results. And this will really be what brings in the organic traffic that you'll be seeing on your site. So these are important to just make sure that your important pages are getting indexed. Any ones that aren't, You can request indexing or see what the reason is for them not to get indexed, and then making sure that every page has a canonical, especially when there's multiple variants of that page that could put them at risk for duplicate content.
Yep, absolutely. And this is just a good heads up to everyone who is listening. Just because you created a page on your website, could be the best, most thought out page, lots of unique content, doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be indexed. So it's really helpful when you do that SEO audit just to make sure all those key pages that you put a lot of time and effort to build are actually getting appropriate credit, and Google is indexing it. And Google, through Google Search Console, we'll be able to see which pages are indexed or not. And if it's not being indexed, it'll actually give indication of why it may not be indexed. And one option could be because the canonicals are maybe misplaced. And a key page that you have on your site, you have a canonical that's pointing to another page, which is just telling Google, don't bother with this page, look at another page. So it's super important just to high level see which pages are even being indexed, and if Google and all the other search engines are able to read that. Thanks for sharing that. Meta titles. Meta titles have been around for a long time, still important for SEO as they have been in the past. Why don't you share a little bit about meta titles, what you recommend, and what you like to avoid when putting together technical recommendations?
So these are a really important indicator to Google what a page on your site is about. When you're in Google search results, this is going to be the title that you see before you click into a site. So it's really important that you make sure that any primary keyword that you want to be targeting on the page, so that's the keyword that most users will be searching for, that you want to start guiding traffic towards your site from, you will want that in the meta title. So that will be the primary keyword in the meta title. Also making sure that if you're separating your brand name or other information from the main title, using a dash instead of a pipe. We often see that there's that vertical line that's being used to separate things in a meta title. You'll actually want to switch that to a dash, as the pipe will mean that it's or. So for one example, it would be men's sneakers or your brand name. That's why you want to have the dash there instead. Making sure that it's short and concise is really important, just to make sure that your entire title is showing up in search results. It's not getting cut off in any sort of way that users won't be able to see the whole title. And putting your primary keywords as close to the front of the title as possible. So you can actually see in the example over there to the right. So if you're doing a page on men's sneakers, you don't want to have shoes before men's sneakers and then shoes before women's sneakers, because men's sneakers and women's sneakers are the most important aspect of that page. You'll want to put that first.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just thinking from a marketing perspective, the title, that blue hyperlink text on the Google search engine results page, I mean, you want to make that as relevant to the search query as possible and as clickable. So you definitely want to include all these elements that Jill's mentioned, including those primary keywords and really moving them up. So that way, when someone does that search, they'll see, okay, you have the exact product or service that I'm looking for. Now, similarly, let's talk about meta descriptions. What are meta descriptions, and what are some of the best practices?
So when you're in search results, there's going to be a little description under the title. That will be your meta description. You'll essentially want this meta description to be a summary that covers all the main points of that web page. So you're telling both Google and users what the main aspects are that you really want to highlight on that page, and those will be in the description. You don't want this description to be too long. So keeping it a maximum of 160 characters, including spaces, is ideal. Making sure you're targeting the right keywords too. So while your meta title will have the primary keyword, your meta description should also make sure that that's in line with the title by either including the primary keyword or a variation of the primary keyword, and any aspects that might be highlighted in the subheadings on the page you may want to include as well in that description. Avoiding any duplicate descriptions is important too. For the same reason that you set canonicals on pages, you really want to avoid that duplicate content issue. So just making sure that each meta description is unique and not used on any other page. If you don't have a meta description set up, Google will set one. However, setting one yourself is just an opportunity to ensure that the most important aspects of your website or your web page are specified.
Yep, absolutely. And meta descriptions, I mean, Jill, you'd say are generally overlooked by a lot of the sites that we look at, huh?
Yeah, we do often see a lot of either duplicate descriptions or ones that they may be descriptive, but they may not be fully describing the most important aspects of that web page.
Yep. And yeah, and a lot of companies, they might just duplicate meta descriptions or maybe write a description, but may end up being a couple of years old and they just never revisit it. And I always like to think if you're advertising on Google, let's say with search text ads, would you let one ad copy just run indefinitely for the next couple of years? You probably wouldn't, because there could be better iterations that you should test. Use that same logic for a meta description, making sure it's as relevant as possible to whatever that page is about. And then over time, you can even do some testing to try to even get more relevancy. And by having a better meta description, your click-through rate is going to increase. So you're going to generally get more clicks. And that's a positive ranking signal for Google. So you might even be able to up the ranks for that given page. Headers is also a really important piece of technical SEO. Jill, why don't you share what headers are and how we like to think about optimizing them?
So headers are those little sections of your page. So the H1 will be the title of your page. That will be the first header on the page. Underneath that, though, you may have some subsections, subheadings. So those will be your H2s. The most important thing to keep in mind when you're structuring your headers on a page is that according to Google, most headers should be organized hierarchically. This means that H2s should follow H1s, H3s should follow H2s, and so forth. There's not often a time where you would want, say, an H4 to follow an H1. You'll want to make sure that it's really organized in that hierarchy structure. And the further down your hierarchy you go, your headers go, the less weight they hold. So for this reason, any headers in the footer on that page should be lower in the hierarchy, such as an H4, H5, so that they're not confused as being very high value content points on a page. And that will depend on how your other headers on the page are structured as well. It's easy to make mistakes when headers are set up in the back end of your site. Sometimes we see that people have some accidental blank headers set up, or they have more than one header one. You'll only ever want to have one H1, although you can have multiple H2s, H3s, etc. And then just, making sure if there's any blank headers, you'll just want to have those removed. But a technical audit will be able to review all of these headers, list them all out so you can easily see the current layout, and then that will allow you to know where to make the best changes.
Yep. Super, super helpful. And as you mentioned, Google really values the content that's in these headers. And just to take it 10 steps back is the Google crawlers are insanely powerful, but the internet is massive. And these crawlers have to go literally crawl the entire web. There's only so much crawling budget that a crawler has. So oftentimes they'll first look at the headers of each page and get a lot of contextual signals that way versus manually or through a bot reading every single paragraph. So Google does prioritize headers to understand what the content is about. So it's super important just to take a look at what type of messaging are you sending to Google that is the main topic of the page, header one, and then all the subtopics, H2, H3, H4, and so on and so forth. Image alt text has been around for a long time, still super helpful for technical SEO. Jill, tell us a little bit about how you like to think and optimize image alt text.
So every image on your site should have alt text, and every unique image on the site should have unique alt text. So a lot of times we'll see if there's more than one picture of a product, they'll have the same image alt text for all three images, even though those images are different from each other. So you wouldn't want to have, for example, in this example on the slide, you wouldn't want to have shampoo for curly hair for all three of those images, even though all three of those images may be used to bring across the point of that it's for shampoo for curly hair. You'll want to have a unique description under each of those. Alt text should accurately describe the image in a way that you want both users and Google to understand the purpose of that image being on that page. When an image doesn't load, the alt text will appear instead. So that's when users will be able to see it and understand what image they're missing. And Google is able to read that description as well and just understand why that image is on that page.
Yep. Be as specific as possible about that image. It's another super helpful signal to Google to understand more content that's on your page. In an image form, it's kind of hard for Google to really understand that. So be very specific within that image alt text. Now, we covered the main ones and main elements within technical audit, but it definitely doesn't end there. There's a couple other ones worthy of chatting about. So Jill, why don't you walk us through some of the additional technical audit suggestions that we recommend to review?
Sure. So the first thing to review is just broken links. If there's any internal or external broken links, they should be found and either removed or replaced. They don't have any sort of value to users. If anything, it just gets very confusing because they either can't access a page or it doesn't take them anywhere where they're supposed to be. The next one would just be URL changes. So URLs should always be following those best practices outlined for URL structures. So any URLs that are not following best practices should be changed. And then if there are any URL changes that are made, any old URLs should then redirect to the new one. The next one on there is just page speed and core web vitals. So just ensuring that for optimal user experience, just reviewing your page speed and making sure your core web vitals are not failing. There's a few tools you can use to review this, and you'll be able to just troubleshoot any issues that are leading to a slower page speed or just really poor user experience. Duplicate content, as mentioned before, each page should have unique content from the meta title to the description. They should all have unique URLs, unique headers, unique content. Each page should have its own purpose. The last one on there is just schema. So when schema is not set up properly, it can do more harm than good to your site. So if there's any schema during the technical audit that we review that just is invalid, that should either be replaced or removed. And then just making sure that your schema that is valid is just being properly used. So there's a lot of different structured data markup that you can have on a page, but just making sure that you're using the right ones and you're using them in the purpose that they should be used for.
Yeah, absolutely. My favorite on this list is URL changes. We're going through this right now with an existing SEO client, is just taking a look at the URL structure. Does it make sense for the business? A lot of times sites are created that maybe doesn't cover the full breadth of products and services that they're at now. So you really want to be insanely mindful of what the URL structure is. Does it follow SEO best practices? And is it really set up for success for the business for future product lines and services that they may offer? That's a big one in my part, but all of these are super important. We're going to cover what schema is, the different types of schema and how it can shape rich results, how to check structured data markup. So once you implement this on your site, how to make sure that it is set up correctly. There's a couple different ways that you can go about it that Jill's going to walk us through, schema.org and Google Rich Snippet, Rich Results tool. Towards the end, we're going to get into how it can impact to SEO. You definitely want to stay around for that because ultimately that's why you really want to implement schema to increase your SEO. And then we're going to get into schema best practices. So let's get into it. So Jill, why don't you share what exactly is schema?
So schema is structured data markup that helps search engines like Google and Bing understand the purpose and content on your pages. Structured data markup is in the form in a coding format. So there's 3 different formats that they use. It's JSON, LD, microdata, and RDFA. If you don't have coding knowledge, it's best to have a web developer help you implement this, as it can get confusing. If you implement it incorrectly, it could actually cause more harm than good to your site. But there's plenty of tools that you can use to help implement this on your site and make sure that the code is properly set up. And there's a few hosting platforms that also have options for automatic schema setup that might already be on your site. So if you're using a web hosting platform like WordPress, you might see that through Yoast on each of the web pages, you have an option to review your schema on there and make adjustments.
Definitely. And I think it's critical. I just want to emphasize a point that you made. It's really important to have a developer oversee this process, whether you are using a third-party plugin or not, because it is very technical. And Jill, it sounds like if you don't really understand coding on a website, you might be doing more harm than good by trying to DIY this. Is that fair?
Yep, that's correct.
Now, how many different types of schema are out there? Can you break down for all the businesses that are listening to this, what types of schema are out there that we should consider?
So there's a lot of different types of schema. On schema.org, which is the site for all of reviewing all the types of schema, there are currently about 806 on there. Any of the pages on your website that you want indexed can contain schema markup, but the type of schema you use may be different on each page. For example, a product page is going to require a different schema markup than a blog article. So as is with anything related to SEO, the main purpose of schema is just to provide a clearer understanding to Google of where to place your sites in search results based on how you're able to help a user's query or help provide answers to what customers are searching for or potential users are searching for. They'll be able to understand your schema better based on the type of schema markup so that they understand the main primary focus of your web pages and what you want them to be used for.
Definitely. So it sounds like, 800 plus different types. Any business out there, there's probably going to be at least multiple schema that they should consider, huh?
Yep, there could be a few that you can implement at the same time on a web page. You can see kind of the organizational organization of how schema.org sets up so that you can look at all the different types. So on that left-hand side, you'll see broader types. And then within each of those, there's a lot of options in there for different areas that can be implemented for schema. So if you have products, you can include things like your pricing. You can include things about whether it's in stock or the delivery time. So there's a lot of options and you may not need to use all of them, but it's best to review the sections, and that site can get a little bit confusing. So same as before, it might be helpful to have a web developer look at it with you.
Definitely. And a good example, businesses out there, there's schema for that, for types of businesses, and then underneath that you can even put in service areas of specific cities, states, or regions that you focus on, or even types of services. And this is kind of like all behind the scenes that all the engines can properly read okay. But let's get into more of the types of schema. So why don't you kind of share high level just some of the types available?
So because there's so many, we wouldn't be able to cover obviously all of them today. But there are a lot of common ones that are used on pretty much any sort of business website that has used schema. So the first one on there, organization, this would be important company information. It could include things like your address or a description of your business. Local business is similar to organization. The difference is that it's more geo-specific information. So you might want to include on specific pages on your website the areas that you serve, so areas in which your business offerings are used. This could be towns and cities that you might want to list out so that search engines know that there are certain regions that would want that information more than others. Next to that is product schema. So that's more information about your product. So this would be on product pages. It can include things like pricing, delivery time, and the availability of your product. You can also include reviews on several different pages on your site. And this could be either product specific reviews, which would be on the product page, or it could be overall business reviews. So you might want your overall business reviews on specific informational pages as well. FAQ is pretty straightforward. That one's just common questions that users might be searching for that could help them get to the right page on your site. Video, this video schema is used for when a video is a primary focus on your page. So when you really want to tell search engines that this video has great importance and value to users. You wouldn't want to do it for videos that are just small little clips that are just to help kind of from more of an aesthetic standpoint. These are more for the informational videos that you have. Article schema is for blog posts, news articles, press releases. It helps Google understand that these pages are more informational than transactional. So these wouldn't necessarily, you wouldn't see article schema on something like a product page. Breadcrumb list is the last one on there. This can be used on several different types of pages. The main purpose of it is just to help users understand how far into your site they are, and also just indicate a page's position in your site's hierarchy. So that's going to help search engines understand your site's hierarchy a little better as well. And this could be things like you might have breadcrumb list on a product page where under the women's category on your site, you have a shoes category and then a specific pair of sneakers. So that breadcrumb list is going to let you know that the sneakers are within 2 more categories on that site.
Yeah. And also, Jill, fair to say that any business, they can have multiple different types of schema at once.
Yes. Yeah, you can have multiple different types of schema. Depending on the page, you might have several different schemas in place at the same time.
Awesome. Great. Thanks for sharing that. Let's get into rich results, because this can be a huge impact on SEO. Why don't you break down what are Google rich results and how can websites take advantage?
So this is a main benefit of schema, is that you'll be able to see your results in search results a lot better, or just have more value than they normally do. So for example, there's 3 examples in there. The Amazon.com example on the left, that has organization schema, where if you implement organization schema and you search for Amazon, you'll see a whole blurb about their company on the right-hand side, and you'll be able to see all of that information about the company. That has a lot to do with just making sure that Google is able to receive that information easily, and that comes through schema. The second one on there is Best Buy. So you'll be able to see at the bottom there that they have store reviews on there. You'll be able to see the prices for those headphones on there. It shows that they have free delivery, and it even shows information on returns. So that's a lot of more product specific information that before users even go into your site, they'll be able to see a lot of information that might even push them to click on that. And they wouldn't necessarily click on that if they hadn't seen that information. So if users are seeing a lot of reviews on their site, they're more likely to click in. The last one on there is an example of breadcrumb schema. So you'll be able to see on the bottom that there's actually subsections within that long blog article about schema markup, where you'll be able to click into those sections specifically.
Awesome. Yeah, and click-through rate is such a insanely helpful part of SEO, and by having Google's rich snippets, definitely, as Jill mentioned, it's going to help increase your click-through rate. By increasing your click-through rate, you're just, by nature of definition of click-through rate, you're just going to get a lot more clicks. But also, Google and the search engines take notice. So when folks are clicking on your listings much more frequently, they're going to say that, okay, they're providing something of value. I'm going to rank them higher and higher up. So it can really help out in a lot of different ways. So thanks for sharing that. Now, let's say someone implements some markup through a developer. How do they check to make sure that schema is set up correctly?
So on that slide, there's 2 different options that you can use to check schema. And these are the best tools. There's definitely a lot of tools out there that you could use. That one on the left-hand side for Google's Rich Results tool. Google's Rich Results tool, it's able to show you how your pages are going to appear in search results, how those rich results are going to look based on that schema. So you'll be able to review all of that information in there. If you want to check, however, if your schema is working properly, if the code is written correctly, that's when you'd rather use schema.org. They have a validator on there. This validate tool, you'll be able to see the code listed out, and it'll show you subsections on the right-hand side of that, where you'll be able to even break down the types of schema that it's recognizing through that code.
Yep. And these tools are all free, right?
Yes, both free tools, very easy to use. The validate tool for schema.org, you're able to either post a URL, a live URL in there, or you can even post the entire code in there.
Yep. And for folks that have businesses, have websites, you may not even know if you have Schema on or not. So even if you're not implementing today, you just want to see what's on, pop in your URL into either of these tools and you'll be able to see where you currently have, is it Schema marked up correctly, or what you're missing, so that way you can put together a plan moving forward. So does Schema impact SEO? What do you think, Jill?
It does, and it has some great benefits if it's implemented correctly. So the biggest one is that it makes it really clear to Google and Bing. They'll just be able to understand the page's content better. They'll be able to clarify important information that you want to highlight on that page. It's really going to help get the purpose of your pages across, whether it's informational page, a transactional page, or a commercial page. It's also going to help increase visibility. So search engines that understand your page better will be able to rank them better in organic search results. It also helps become more engaging to users. So it's going to create those rich results that are going to lead to a higher click-through rate. And then in addition, so for the click-through rate, it's just going to be able to help to have more information for users before they even click into your site. So like I was mentioning before with that Best Buy example, when you see a lot of reviews before you even have to click into a site, it might be the reason that some users are going to click in.
Yep, absolutely. And also just a reminder to everyone who's listening, this is a language agreed upon by the search engines. Like everyone, they agreed upon this language as the easy way to really better understand what this site is all about and services. So definitely fill this out. Anytime you give Google information on a platter of what your site's about, it's definitely going to help you out. And of course, any of those engagement signals, super helpful. And yeah, as you mentioned, it can also pre-qualify some of the traffic, where if they like what they see in the listings on Google, they're going to click, and more likely than not, they're going to have a better conversion rate on your website. What are some of the Schema best practices that folks should take into consideration?
So the first one on there is just not to overuse Schema. So Schema should really be reserved for highlighting the primary element or purpose of the content on a web page. If you have too much Schema, it can get kind of confusing. It may not be implemented correctly. There's a lot more risk that could happen there that could do more harm than good to your site. So the primary purpose or primary element Schema could include, for a product page example, again, the price, delivery time, whether it's in stock or not. Those are all things that users will want to know before they click into the site. And search engines will want to know that this is emphasizing that this is a product page. Monitoring performance is another great one. So just making sure that after you've implemented Schema, if you're looking at the impact on search visibility and click-through rate, you'll be able to see whether that schema is working or not. Making sure that you either understand structured data markup or schema markup, or have help from a web developer on there, just to make sure that it's implemented properly. And then leveraging different types of schema. So like we mentioned before, there's a lot of different types of schema that can be used. There's no one type fits all when it comes to schema. Each page is going to have a different markup than the next. A blog post is going to have different schema markup than a product page. So you'll want to have a great understanding of how to use those different types and how you can leverage those to your benefit on your site. And the last one is a pretty simple one, but just making sure that when you're writing schema markup, save it in some sort of a folder, whether it's a Word document or a Google Doc, something on your computer. It's the easiest way for you to refer back to your schema markup after you've implemented it. If there's anything down the road that needs to be fixed or adjusted, you'll be able to easily see it. And that will be the best way to just make quick adjustments.
Definitely. Yeah, that's a easy one. Just save all the coding and language on a Google Doc somewhere, because you may not do Schema again for another year or so, and then you're going to have to jog your memory of like, wait, how did this work? Or maybe you'll have a developer on your site. It's like, hey, what's all this Schema code about? And then you could reference that. So super helpful. But yeah, getting back to recommendations that you shared earlier, Jill, is have a developer implement Schema. You could DIY it, but you put yourself at somewhat of risk, and you're not going to be sure if you really implement it correctly. we're going to cover a few different things, really look at canonicals from all different layers. First, we're going to go into overall what are canonical URLs, and next we're going to get into duplicate content and how that can impact SEO, which can definitely throw a negative signal towards SEO. We're going to break down how to canonicalize a URL, and it really varies per platform. And we're going to talk about some of the major platforms that we can canonicalize URLs, including WordPress and Wix and some other platforms. Moving on, we're going to get into URL structure and how that impacts SEO. There's a lot of questions regarding URL structure and keyword stuffing, and should you keyword stuff? Does that impact, and what things that you should look out for? And especially if you're creating a new website or really planning ahead for your existing website, you should really give a lot of time and consideration on how to set up the appropriate URL structure, which is both going to help out the user experience as well as just general SEO. And then we're going to get into some URL best practices. So again, if you are interested in growing your organic traffic or setting up the solid foundation for your website, this is definitely a really good webinar for you. So let's get into it. A common question that we get is, what is a canonical URL? So Jill, would you mind sharing with everyone, what is a canonical URL?
Sure. A canonical URL is normally one that's chosen to represent a group of duplicate or very similar pages. You can either choose to set the URL yourself, the canonical URL, or you can have Google choose the URL for you. In that screenshot there, you can see in Google Search Console, you'll be able to tell in Google Search Console for any given web page whether there's a user declared canonical, or if Google has declared it canonical that's different than the one that you've set. The one thing about letting Google set your canonical for you is that you could risk them declaring the wrong canonical URL to be the set URL. And then you can also risk it not getting indexed, because it is confusing to Google, as it seems like duplicate content when you have more than one variant of a page. You don't want to risk lowering your search rankings or leaving pages unindexed because of that duplicate content.
Yep. And this screenshot, where did this come from?
So that is a screenshot from Google Search Console. There's a search bar in Google Search Console where you can put in any of your page URLs, and you'll be able to see under the indexing area whether there is a set canonical or not.
Excellent. Yeah, and are there any pages that people should maybe look to see if there's a canonical, maybe pages that have similar content to other pages?
So there's a lot of reasons why pages might have different variants. So for in e-commerce, for example, your product pages may have multiple variants of the same product on a given web page. So if you have a certain product that comes in different colors, you might have the color represented in the URL for that page. So the canonical URL would encompass all of those URLs, so that not all of those URLs with each color are getting indexed. It's just one URL per page that's getting indexed in Google search results. That way it's providing a unique value to users who are able to see it in search results and navigate to that page. Another example of having duplicate content is normally you'll have the HTTPS secure protocol URL as their set canonical. You'll also have a different one that's for HTTP. That's not the secure one. That one you don't want to be indexed. You want to have just that HTTPS indexed, but there will be two variants, so you'll have to set that canonical.
Got it. Yeah, and that's super helpful just to tell Google that this is the one that you should be focusing on versus crawling in index all these duplicate pages and just throws off a bunch of mixed signals. Excellent. Thanks for sharing that. And you gave some examples right here of just kind of the different canonicals that you may want to consider. I know you talked about products. Anything else that any other examples here?
Yep, so those are great examples to see. So yeah, so that first one is the product one. So you can see that second variant down, you see product sizing in there. If there's more than one color, so that one's color specified as being red. If there's a red and a green product, but it's the same type of product on the same page, you don't want both of those indexed. So you would just have the product name, as you can see under that set canonical at the top. And then on the other side, for blogs, there's never really a reason why users would want to navigate to the second page of a blog section. You would always want them to go to that first page so they can flip through the pages themselves. So that's when you would set the canonical URL to be that main page.
Yep, definitely. Again, just telling Google that this is the primary page that you should focus and the original one. And also, if any of these sub pages, so for example, these product pages for e-commerce, different variants, color variants, let's say the red shoe is canonicalized to the main product, that's still going to pass any link equity that has from that original variant. But again, this is just remove duplicate content. And even for e-commerce shops, it's good to really point to that main canonical to the core pillar product that maybe you get the most sales out of, or just kind of like that hero product. Excellent. Thanks for sharing those examples. Now, duplicate content has severe implications with SEO. Do you mind sharing what duplicate content impact on SEO is?
Yep. In an ideal website, you wouldn't have any duplicate content on a site, but as your site grows, you're going to find that there's more reasons why you may need duplicate content, or you may have duplicate content on the site. And this has a lot of implications with SEO and how Google views those pages. So it can really confuse search engines when there's multiple variations of a page that are able to be indexed. For one, it leaves Google to determine which one of those is the priority variant for that page, and that they might just not have an accurate answer to which one is the priority variant. You might have a disagreement there. And then the second one is that there's no additional value for multiple URLs going to the same page to be indexed. So with Google, their goal for search results is that each result that a user clicks into from search results is going to have a unique value and unique content in there. If you have two URLs going to the same page, then that's not really going to add any additional value to those users. They're not going to see anything new. And then the last one is that if there's no canonical set, then you risk an important page not even getting indexed.
Yep. Yeah, that's true. You might have some variant of a page that Google's thinking is the canonical that should be the most important page, where reality it's not. So it's always good to check that. So anyone who is listening, it's okay if occasionally you do have duplicate content, but if you do, make sure that you set up the appropriate canonicals, just so that way it doesn't give mixed signals to the engines and also create a poor experience for the user. How would we set up a canonical URLs?
So to set up a canonical URL, it really depends on how your site is, where your site is hosted, and whether that hosting platform requires any sort of plugin to be able to set the canonical. So for example, if you have your site through WordPress, WordPress often requires a plugin. One example of that is using Yoast. Yoast is a major plugin that they use that just allows you to easily manage your on-page SEO, such as metadata, canonical URLs, and you'll be able to see your primary keywords on there as well. But other platforms such as Wix, they'll have a built-in feature where you'll be able to set your canonical URL or review your canonical URLs. And there's always alternative options for setting up these canonicals. So one example is redirecting all of your variants to that canonical URL. That's going to make it really easy to determine which one is the priority URL. Another one is that canonical link. So if you have PDF pages or any other non-HTML pages, you'll be able to add that to your HTTP header.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anyone who's listening has any questions regarding their unique website or platform that they're on, definitely feel free to drop a chat or contact us directly. But there's a few ways of going about it. Yoast is probably one of the easiest ones through WordPress, but Yoast isn't accessible with all web platforms. So definitely feel free to reach out. But most importantly is that you do set canonicals. If you do have some level of duplicate content, you need to send the correct signals over to Google. A question that we get quite a bit is, do URLs impact SEO? Jill, what's your take on this?
So this goes a little bit beyond canonical URLs. So just looking at the URL structure in general, it often just has a very minor direct influence on your search rankings. So the biggest, most important thing to remember is just to make sure that your URLs are easy to read and understand for both users and search engines. And by doing it for users first, you're really improving that positive user experience that you can get. Users will be able to see your URL and kind of understand what the main purpose of that page is. And you'll be able to also put in target keywords for the URLs. So oftentimes you'll have a primary keyword in the title of the URL. You can also include in the title of the page, you'll also be able to include that in the URL.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like maybe years ago, this was a stronger ranking signal to keyword stuff URLs and just buy domains just based off of the keywords that it has within it. But it seems like it's not as important. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. And I mean, case in point, our URL is risemkg.com. And we rank for a bunch of SEO type keywords or advertising keywords. So you don't necessarily have to stuff URLs with specific keywords in it. And Jill, as you mentioned, always focus number one on the user experience. Generally, if you do that with all things SEO, Google is going to reward you because it's a better experience. And at the end of the day, Google wants what's best for the user, and it's going to rank those pages much higher. What are some of the URL best practices, which will be super helpful for folks that are just starting a website or looking to reassess their current URL structure?
So a lot of these URL best practices are pretty straightforward. Like we were mentioning, it's really important to just make sure you're providing a positive user experience. So as long as your URLs read very clearly, you're oftentimes going to be utilizing the best practices naturally. Some of those are just making sure that if you have multiple words in your slug, so for example, if you're writing a blog on best SEO practices, you'll want to have a dash separating those words, best SEO and then practices. Oftentimes it's a dash instead of an underscore. So I would remember to use that instead. It just makes it easier to read for users, and it also makes it a little easier to read for Google as well. The next one is just utilizing important keywords. So this doesn't always happen, but if there is a primary keyword in the meta title, it makes it very easy to incorporate that keyword into the URL as well. And it just makes it easy for people who are searching for that topic to just understand that that is what that page is covering. The next one is not to use only numbers in the URL. Almost every page on your website is going to have some sort of content or some sort of title on the page. So there's really never many reasons why you would want to have just numbers in your URL. And then just making sure that you're using that secure protocol as a best practice. Avoiding dates in your URL is a big one. Dates oftentimes for something like WordPress might automatically end up in your URL. You'll want to avoid that as it doesn't really add any sort of additional value to that URL or to that user. It just ends up making it a super long URL and just kind of confusing. And the last thing is just making sure that those URLs are simple and easy to read. So sometimes that might even mean getting rid of stop words such as the or and, because you're still going to get across the same meaning.
Yep. Yeah, really good best practices here. And just speaking from experience with some of the clients that we work with, I mean, it's amazing. There are websites out there that don't have the secure protocol that are still HTTP. We ran across one on a client within this past year that we helped power and are continuing to help power their marketing. And we're shocked that they did not have secure protocol when Google said even years ago that that will impact ranking. So always make sure you have that. And dates, yeah, it's so funny that some WordPress sites, it's just automatically defaulted to include the date, and not necessarily, and actually can really backfire because let's say you have an excellent blog post that is pretty much almost timeless, or it has a pretty long shelf life. If you have a date, and let's say it's 2 years old, it almost just puts a negative perception on that content, because then folks will be like, oh, is this even relevant to me anymore? So don't have that. And then, as you mentioned, just keep things as clean as possible. And this can even get into the overall structure of your site of if you have different types of categories, you could have the domain category slash any type of pages that you're looking for. So it's always good just to really take a few steps back, understand the overall architecture of your website, and making sure that the URLs are following these best practices. So we're going to break down what are core web vitals. It seems like very mysterious, but everyone who's listening to this should definitely listen to this live stream, just because Google has been pushing this for a long time. And if Google tells you that you should pay attention to it, if you want to rank on Google, you should probably pay attention to it. So we're going to cover what are core web vitals, how to track core web vitals. There's a lot of great tools out there that you can access this information even today. Then we're going to really start to break down what are the three main components of core web vitals. And then just to cap this off, we're going to talk about a little bit about the importance of core web vitals, and which it kind of gets into why we're even having this discussion, because it can really critically help a website rank higher on Google. And then lastly, strategizing for optimizing website performance just to meet these core web vital thresholds. So that's the agenda that we have here. If anyone is tuning in live, feel free to drop any questions in. So, but let's just jump right into it here. So, Jill, high level, what are core web vitals?
So core web vitals in total are metrics that are used by Google to help both web developers and site owners, and even Google themselves, to understand how to improve the user experience on your site. So as you know, poor user experience can lead to just a lot of negative things. So there will be a higher bounce rate, lower session durations, even less returning visitors, which can all hurt your organic performance on your site. So it is really important to follow the suggestions of updating based on core web vital reporting. It's a great just roadmap of how to fix your site from a technical standpoint.
Yeah, definitely. And Google's been really pushing this out, because Google will factor this in terms of ranking, because ultimately they want a good web experience for their users. And if there's sites out there that just has a really poor user experience, whether it's based off of page speed or stability or things like that, Google's not going to rank. And they've standardized these type of metrics that all websites are going to be really assessed on. And so Google's just telling websites of, hey, here are the things that we're looking out for, because based off of our data, they're really important for user experience. And they'll even give you a score. And then, so again, as I mentioned earlier, if Google's telling you that you should pay attention to something, you probably should. And there's a significant amount of upside to this that we're going to get into a little bit. Anything else that maybe we should talk about high level about core web vitals?
Just another thing on the importance. So core web vitals does have a lot to do with the page speed of how things are loading and when users can interact with things on your site. And users don't like to wait very long for those things to load. So there are a lot of terms of measurement in there, in terms of seconds of they most likely won't wait more than a few seconds for a page to load. So you'll want to make sure that all of the measurements that are through the scoring systems of core web vitals are being followed.
Yeah, absolutely. So what type of tools are out there that we can start to assess core web vitals and just get some type of a read there?
So there's a lot of great tools out there, and a lot of them are free to use so that you can assess your core web vitals. Two of them are actually from Google. So the first one is Google Search Console. You may already have this set up on your site. I know we have another webinar that covered Google Search Console as well. It's a very easy free tool to use. You will need to have your site owner verified as an owner of the site in order to see the core web vital reporting within Google Search Console. So if you have multiple users within that account, they may not all be able to see the core web vital reporting without that verified ownership. And that verified ownership will take about 24 to 48 hours if it's not already set up for you to use Google Search Console. It's a nice section in the dashboard, and you can even see a screenshot of it right there that it'll show you your URLs and whether they're performing poor, whether they need improvement, or whether they're good. And then it'll give you some detailed reporting of how you might be able to fix any ones that are poor or that need improvement.
Yep. Yeah, and Jill, as you mentioned, I'm glad you brought this up on our last webinar. You guys can access this on our YouTube channel. We talked about Google Search Console, how to set it up, and the whole purpose of that. So if you don't have Google Search Console set up, definitely feel free to watch our prior webinar on how to set this up. But this is a free tool. These are great free resources that Google gives out to all marketers to assess this. So this is definitely a good one. And then what about Page Speed Insights?
So Page Speed Insights is actually another free tool offered by Google. It's really great for in-depth analysis. You can only analyze one URL at a time, but it is very important to see how it breaks it down based on their scoring system. It'll provide you with a overall performance score from 0 to 100, with 100 being the best. 0 to 49 would be considered a bad performance score. 50 to 89 needs improvement. 90 to 100 is good. And it'll give you a lot of great detail in there based on all of the key metrics that Core Web Vitals offers. It is something that you will most likely need your web developer to take a look at with you. It does get very heavy from a technical standpoint, so you'll need them to help review some of those changes and make them on your site.
Yeah, definitely. And again, another free tool. And it's actually interesting. Google has page speed is still very, very important, but this was probably like even 5 years ago, 7 years ago. User experience was primarily, or at least publicly acknowledged as really driven by page speed. You have to have fast page speed because otherwise it's not going to load. It's a bad user experience. But Google expanded their metrics. It's not just page speed. Page speed is super important, but there's so many other elements of Core Web Vitals that we're going to get into. So with that, let's talk about what are the key metrics, high level, for Core Web Vitals.
So there are 3 key metrics that make up Core Web Vitals. Right now, it's largest contentful paint, cumulative layout shift, and then interaction to next paint. Before March 2024, when it switched over, there was first input delay, which was also a key metric. That was replaced by interaction to next paint, which we can cover as well. But that basically was just a better measurement of kind of the same kind of data for responsiveness.
Yep. And for any marketer, business owner that's watching this right now, you're probably super confused. Like, what's LCP? What's CLS? IMP? I totally hear you. I get it. And even some of these words are a little jumbled. But on the following slides, we're going to break down everything for you so that way each of these makes sense. But really, if you optimize towards these and understand where to get this type of information, assess your score, and then optimize towards these, you're going to see some level of improvement, not only from a user perspective, but also SEO. So going into more detail within Core Web Vitals, largest contentful paint, otherwise known as LCP. Jill, why don't you share a little bit more about what does that mean?
So quickly, LCP is how quickly the main content of a page loads. It is measured in time, with an ideal score being 2.5 seconds or less. It gives website owners and Google just a better understanding of when pages are ready to be interacted with. So before first contentful paint is another measurement. However, that one may not be the best indicator of when users are able to interact with the page. With first contentful paint, the first thing to render on a page could be something like the logo on the top of the page. So that's not necessarily part of the primary information that you'll see on a page. So it's not as good of an indicator of when users will get to interact with the page. They'll still have to wait for that main part of the page to load. So largest contentful paint could be something like a primary video that encompasses a lot of the information that you'll need for a page. That video might be a high file or a large video file. So that will be the largest thing to load on the page. Users will have to wait for that to load in order to interact fully with the page and get the full benefit out of the page. And another example of that would be on an e-commerce page, a product image. A product image is really important so that they can see what the product looks like before they add it to the cart or before they consider purchasing. If that page doesn't, or if that product image doesn't load quickly, it's really going to hurt their decision of whether they want to pay for that product or not.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks for breaking that down. And and outside of just meeting Google standards, and this is going to help out for any e-commerce marketers that are listening to this or business owners, if you can optimize towards increasing the speed on LCP, otherwise known as largest contentful pane, for that product hero image or video, that's going to help your conversion rates because users are going to get the information way faster, and then otherwise, if it takes a while, they're just going to get frustrated and bounce. So, yeah, thanks for sharing that. And ideal score is what, 2.5 seconds or less?
Yep, 2.5 seconds or less.
Awesome. And again, through the tools that we recommended, Google Search Console, PageSpeed Insights, you can see currently how you're scoring on these. Next is a cumulative layout shift, otherwise known as CLS within Core Web Vitals. What is this?
So we've all been on a page on some sites that the information or the layout on the page kind of jumps around a bit as it's still loading. It could be because there's a banner on the top of the page that was the last thing to load, and so all of the information on the page jumps down from there. This could really just hurt the user interaction on the page. They'll have to wait longer to interact with the page, and it'll be harder with layout shifts for them to interact fully. So example, if a user's returning to a product page they've already been to, they already know where the add to cart button is and they're ready to purchase. If there's a layout shift that happens on that page, they'll try to click on the button and the button will maybe jump lower onto the page. This is just going to cause a lot of frustration for the user, and they won't be able to interact in the way that they want to as quickly as possible. So there is a different scoring system for that as well, with the ideal score being 0.1 or lower.
Yeah. Yeah, and then this is super smart from Google's perspective. It's not always about page speed of like how fast that page loads, but also what's happening once that page is loaded. Is it changing different renders and things like that? And if so, that's really going to throw off the user experience. So this is another super critical one that Google's telling us to follow, and definitely take a look at the reports. And on this slide right here is just a sample screenshot of where you want to be or what's being reported, and the CLS score of what you should obtain of 0.1 or lower. Another metric within Core Web Vitals is interaction to next pane, otherwise known as INP. Jill, why don't you share what exactly is interaction to next pane?
So interaction to next pane actually replaced first input delay as a key metric back in March of this year. It just gives a more accurate understanding of responsiveness of a page based on user input. So with first input delay, that was a measurement of the first interaction when the first interaction of a page was measured. INP is all interactions on a page and how those are measured. So it just gives a better understanding of the total responsiveness of your pages based on all user inputs. One example of this is that users may click on more than one thing on a web page. So INP will give you a total picture of how long the web page took to respond to all of their inputs. And there is their own scoring for INP as well. So that ideal score would be less than 200 milliseconds.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for sharing. And again, it's not just about page speed, and it's about even once page loads and then users start to respond, how quick is the website responding to those users? And again, it's just going to really help out from user experience. Google's going to appreciate it, and your website's going to perform a lot better. So Core Web Vitals as a ranking factor for SEO. I know we're not engineers at Google creating the algorithm, but Jill, what's your take on how important Core Web Vitals are for SEO to rank higher on Google?
So with any SEO strategy, the main goal of that is just to provide the greatest value to the user. That's Google's goal, and that should be a business owner or site owner's goal as well. So with Core Web Vitals, that's just Google's assessment of user experience on your site. So it's just going to help you get a greater understanding from a technical standpoint of how you can improve your site so that users are able to easily interact with things, your site's able to easily respond to their input, and you'll be able to see in full detail how to make that a faster and better experience for them.
Yeah, definitely. And because you can have the best content in the world, the most valuable content in the world, but if your site is just from a performance standpoint is really just lacking, Google's not going to prioritize that. But if you have excellent core web vitals and really good content, you have to believe Google is going to push you up higher and higher on the rankings. And also, Google tracks everything. It really does. It tracks everything of how many people click into your listings and then what they're doing on the site. So make sure that this is covered. And as I mentioned before, if Google's telling you this is important, you should probably take some note. This isn't just a third-party SEO agency telling you it's important. It's definitely coming directly from the source. Now, all right, so let's say someone pulls in these reports and there's one or two core web vitals that seem a little off. What should be an appropriate next step?
So ideally, this is something you would want to have bring in your web developer for. These can be really heavy changes sometimes to make on your site that you wouldn't want to make without the experience of a web developer. Some of them require coding knowledge, such as JavaScript errors or CSS. So that's when you'll want to have their expertise in there. And they'll be able to see in the reporting through page speed insights or some less detailed reporting through Google Search Console that may encompass more than one URL. You'll be able to see all of that information and some reporting of how to fix it right within those tools.
Yeah. So great next step is make sure you have Google Search Console, start pulling these reports, and then assess, are there issues? If you have green across the board, then you're set, no action required. If you're seeing a lot of red that Google is flagging that a couple of these core web vitals that we covered are not up to par, then take a look at what Google is asking. If you're not technically savvy for it, then it would make sense to hire a developer who has a lot of experience with core web vitals to start working through it. But the first thing to do is understand it, which we're covering this presentation, and then start to assess what your current scores are. And again, if you're falling short, then hire a developer, or if you have an in-house developer, prioritize this up because this is definitely going to help out. Thanks so much for joining us for our SEO technical masterclass. If anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out. And of course, if you need additional support with creating an audit or implementing on your website, feel free to reach out to us at Rise Marketing Group. And our website is risemkg.com. Thank you.